There was a time when man did not fly. He had dreamed of it a million times. To leap upward, to escape this strange grip of the earth, to fly. But alas, these were only dreams. Man had been on Earth for thousands of years. Civilization had gone through centuries of development, and still, man did not fly. Frightened by superstition and hindered by his own ignorance, man remained firmly on the ground, a prisoner of his own weight and the law of gravity. Across the centuries, the world has changed. Today, man flies. In the minds of many people, the trampoline is associated with gymnastics. So here we are at one of the world's great gymnastics centers, Woodward Camp, Pennsylvania. How important is the trampoline in your gymnastics program?
As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most important teaching tools that we have. It's the vehicle that we teach all our basic aerial awareness. And without it, you're severely limited in any kind of gymnastics that you would possibly do.
How popular is it amongst your gymnasts here at Woodward?
It's unquestionably the most popular single piece of apparatus we have. You can always tell on Sunday night when the new coaches come, the balance beam area is empty, but the trampoline is full.
One reason for the popularity of trampolining at Woodward is partly due to this innovation, the double bungee system invented by acro skier Frank Bear. None of these athletes are competitive trampolinists. Here we go. Five big ones, five big ones, five big ones. Here it comes.
Wow, nice! All right! A lot of air. How do you feel after that quintuple, huh?
First one, second one, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
A lot harder than four, though.
Did you know right where you were?
Yeah. But it's...
Now you're ready to take off the belt and do it on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Lay down.
Yeah. Speaking of the floor, we found this Nebraska license plate in the Woodward parking lot. It could belong to only one person, world tumbling champion Steve Elliott.
Well, the use of trampoline as a training device for learning high-level skills for tumbling is vitally important. It provides you with more airtime to do skills and provides you a chance to do a lot more skills with a lot less injury of the body. Nearly every world-class tumbler learns high-level skills on the trampoline first.
Elliott has apparently practiced what he preaches. In his remarkable 20-year career, he's led the way in transferring trampoline skills to the tumbling mat, a feat considered almost impossible a short time ago, but now done by every top-flight tumbler in the world. Another place you find trampolines is at diving clubs. This one is at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Its head coach, Olympic diving coach, Dick Kimball. We asked Dick about his use of trampolines in his diving program. Or how would you rate the importance of trampolining in the training of springboard divers?
Well, right now, trampoline, in my program, trampoline is probably one of the biggest parts of our whole program. We do it every day in the belt. Every diver gets in the belt, both on twisters and somersaults, every day. And so it's a really crucial part of my program.
You mostly were a diver that did a little trampolining, isn't that right?
Right, I never did any trampoline until I got to college. I never had any gymnastic background, but I was a diver starting in 6th grade, and I was a seventh grade letterman, so that I competed in high school 6 years. It was the same thing, and was a 4-year state champion in diving. And then I got to Michigan, and I started bouncing a little trampoline, learned a routine, and by the time I graduated, I was doing as much trampoline as diving.
Dick Kimball's fondness for both diving and trampoline made him a world-class athlete in both events. But when he combined the two, it was really something to see. This is Dick Kimball, diver and trampolinist. Jumping from the tramp to the water is nothing new. Check out this priceless footage.
The great Sam Howard has hung a trampoline on the high tower and does a combination dive of 3 in 1. This includes a full gainer, then a swan dive, and a 1.5 somersault. Beautiful, isn't it? Okay, Sam, we're ready for another. And the human jumping jack flies out of the canvas with an open 2.5. Oh, and it's a beauty. And now another combination dive. Calling them off. A full gainer, then a front somersault, into a swan, and a 1.5. There you are, 4 dives in 1 leap. There is no feat in going places out of a trampoline, but it may throw you or any jumper in any direction. For Howard to steer his rebound calls for the utmost in balance, timing, and body control. He's plenty high, and an off-balance jump might cause a very painful landing in the water. Well, you wouldn't believe a fellow could be bothered on a 30-foot diving tower. Go ahead, Sam, it's his own funeral. We'll be his chief mourners. Scared, eh? Well, get brave, big boy. You asked for it. He's off, poor sucker. And makes a hole in 1.
I wonder what Sam and Larry would say if they could be in Toronto on Canada Day weekend for this event.
Reach for the sky. Oh, yeah.
The trampoline connection to diving, tumbling, and gymnastics is obvious. But what of the apparatus itself? Where did it come from? Who invented it? And just what is a trampoline? Excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
You are from Spain, aren't you?
that's right.
How do you say the word trampoline in Spanish?
Trampoline in Spanish, we say cama elástica.
Cama elástica?
Yeah.
I thought you said something like trampolina or something.
No, that means springboard in Spanish, like in diving.
Oh, well, now that's in Spanish. Now, how would you say it in Russian?
Russian, I don't know, but you can ask my friend Dimitri.
Oh, Dmitri.
Hello.
Hello. Can you tell me, how do you say trampoline in Russian?
In Russian, trampoline batut.
Batut.
Yes, batut.
Do you use the trampoline in your training for Olympic gymnastics?
Yes, of course.
Do you like bouncing on the trampoline?
Yes, it's very fun.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Back in 1982, the announcer at the World Trampoline Championships made this brilliant observation.
This is a trampoline. It's an apparatus that stands about 3.5 feet high, 17 feet long, and 10 feet wide. There are 114 springs holding up a middle section of woven nylon.
Now, wait just a minute. My dictionary says that a trampoline is a sheet of heavy cloth, usually canvas, fastened to a wooden frame by dozens of short, very strong elastic cords. Is that what a trampoline is? By that definition, this is not a trampoline. It doesn't have a heavy cloth bed. It has springs instead of elastic cords, and it certainly does not have a wooden frame. The frame is metal. It's true that trampolines have changed since the time of that dictionary definition. These models from the 60s and 50s will attest to that. It's unlikely that today's competitors would have an easy time jumping on this model from 1948. The true trampoline connoisseur would recognize it as a real piece of shimmering chrome and canvas. Nevertheless, NCAA champion Gay Hughes managed to pull off a triple full on it. Those trampolines won't exactly match international specifications, but we can see that the trampoline has undergone quite an evolution across the years. So has the sport. There's one point of view that the only kind of trampolining that matters is the highly formalized international competition style. But trampoline has a long and rich history. To check out some of it, we looked through hundreds and hundreds of home movies, literally miles of film. Come on in, let's take a look at some of them. To get us started, Don Botsford from Ann Arbor, Michigan sent us this trampoline animation. Across the years, trampolines have come in all shapes, sizes, and variation. This one was used in the 50s by the Tumbling Tots of Florida for their trampoline and tumbling act. The professional trampolinists, Mel J. and the Rudells, installed a pole on the side of their trampoline. It was an interesting effect. See the piano that man is playing? It's no piano at all. It's a trampoline. The Schaller Brothers Trampoline Act had one shaped to look just like a piano. It worked after a fashion, but they didn't use it too much. Here is an X-shaped trampoline used by a Romanian circus troupe. And this, well, it's a trampoline without a frame. No frame at all. It was invented by Dr. Bill Harris of Honolulu, Hawaii. He had several models of this frameless trampoline. During the 50s, this Fenner Hamilton model was the largest trampoline made. To find one comparable, we had to go all the way to Toronto to the Skyriders Club. This is Dave Ross, inventor of the Super Tramp and many other trampoline-related items. World-class trampolinist who has turned his talents to manufacturing. And Dave has developed the Super Trampoline that you see here. It is considerably larger than a normal trampoline. Actually, it's more than twice the size in area. A regular trampoline, you can be seen right next to it. This trampoline sits about 5 feet 3 inches off the ground and has an extremely thin bed. This is the thinnest bed on any trampoline. So 1 string by 1 string.
very few trampolines like this in the world. S, the normal 2-string by 2-string, seems considerably thicker. This is a competition trampoline bed.
What we're looking at right now? Somebody jumping to world-class height. Yes, trampoline training has entered a new age altogether with new high-tech equipment. What you see here is the latest in trampoline training equipment. With this, even somebody like myself can go up in the air and roll a backflip. We're going to talk to the inventor of this, Mr. Dave Ross.
Bill is experiencing his first day of bungee bouncing here. He's already mastered the back tuck within minutes, and we'd like him to try his first double back, holding onto the ropes. Okay, Bill, try double back holding onto the ropes. Oh, he's got it without the ropes. Okay, very nice. These shock cords are attached to 4 corners of the gym to allow even a light athlete, depending on how many cords we put on, to go right up to the 24-foot roof. If the athlete tries to travel off the trampoline, try bouncing sideways. Try to bounce on the trampoline beside you, Bill. It tends to center the athlete back to the center, so it's very difficult to fly off the trampoline.
It's true, trampoline technology has come a long ways. But how did it all begin? Who started it? And where did the first trampoline come from? Many people believe that the trampoline was invented by George Nissen in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in his garage during the 30s. Nissen has had unquestionably the greatest positive influence on the sport across the years, and his company was the first to regularly produce the apparatus. George will tell you himself, though, that he didn't actually invent the first trampoline. His improved folding model trampoline did receive a patent, though, in 1943. This was one of many firsts for George, who was to find many creative uses for the trampoline, including rebound racing and spaceball. Nissen also sponsored the first international competitions on the trampoline. Another first was this flip atop the Great Pyramid in Egypt from a mini-tramp that looked old enough to have belonged to the pharaohs. George wouldn't admit whether or not this was an early Nissen model. Some people believe that trampolining came from the Eskimo blanket toss. Now this would be trampolining with a human touch. Could you imagine a world championship using this apparatus? One novel idea of where the trampoline really had its origin was from an old cowboy named Charlie Rourke. Charlie gave the account of American Indians using something like a trampoline back in the mid-1800s. Historian and former trampoline coach Bob Bollinger explains.
States. Back in the early 1940s, as a young boy, I did a lot of prospecting out in Colorado, and I traveled around with an old man in his 90s, believe this or not, that was born in the 1850s, that had actually fought Indians, knew Quanah Parker, the chief of the Comanches. I saw pictures, authentic daguerreograph pictures of Charlie Bjork. And he told me, because I tumbled for him, I could tumble back in those days, and Charlie said, you know, the Comanche Indians used to do this thing where they'd run and jump from one, what they call a trottoir. It's a thing that they carried behind the ponies, and somersault off this from one to the other into a pile of buffalo robes. And that goes back to the Trans-Mississippi frontier days, in the 1870s, when during the great buffalo hunts, when Charlie was there to see it, and I heard it from him firsthand.
We can't verify that Indians bounced onto buffalo robes in the 1800s, but that story may have inspired this event. The double mini trampoline was originally 2 individual mini tramps separated by a spacer. In 1971, Bollinger had the idea for a single long apparatus. Now it's a regular event of the World Championships. Still, where did that first trampoline come from? The most popular belief is that the safety nets under casting and trapeze acts were the first trampolines. Even today, some performers intentionally rebound from the net as a part of their act. From 1909 until World War I, one successful act of this sort was the Flying Fishers. Newspaper reports comment on a world record 25 somersaults in a row done on the net by Clyde Noble of this group. In 1911, a Mexican family headed by the famous Felix Morales did a trampoline and casting act for decades across the southwest U.S. and Latin America. It seems logical that the safety net was the forerunner of the trampoline if one is to watch the great aerialist and circus trampolinist Tito Gaona. Talk about rebounding. Check out this video from a Japanese TV show.
まあ大スターでございます。このサーカスの中でも特にね、お待たせいたしました。はい、サーカスの花形、空中フラリンコでございますが、もうね、これもね、テレビではそっちは私も見てましたけど、やっぱり実際に生で見ると迫力が違うね。全然違う。大体18メートルぐらい、15メートルか18メートルが上でね、これやってるわけでございますが、とにかくね、高さというのはテレビとかやっぱりそういうもんではもう味わえないですね。やっぱりこの現場へ行かなければ。で、この人はもうとにかく落ちた。どこへこの人は行くのかな。言うてないないよ、この人。ビルのね、
Hey, I don't believe it either. Let's check it out again with an English translation.
この人はね、気をつけてよーって来たかったのでね、違うね。全然違う。大体18メートルぐらい、15メートルか18メートルが上でね、これやってるわけでございますが、とにかくね、高さというのはテレビとかやっぱりそういうもんではもう味わえないですね。やっぱりこの現場へ行かなければ。で、この人はもうとにかく落ちた。どこへこの人は行くのかな。言うてないないよ、この人。ビルのね、大体8階ぐらいの高さがあります。
The only problem with trapeze nets being the forerunner of trampolines is that the trampoline is older. The first trapeze safety nets were used in a circus act in New York City in 1869. But trampoline acts were being advertised much earlier than that. A crude trampoline is depicted on a circus poster of the 1840s. And a newspaper in Massachusetts advertised a trampoline act as early as 1811. The earliest written use of the word trampoline was in 1795, when Hughes Circus of London advertised the Grand Saut du Trampoline. A misunderstanding about this ad led to a 50-year rumor that there was an actual person named Du Trampoline. This mistake has appeared in no less than 7 current books about the trampoline. In fact, Saut du Trampoline was the name of a rebounding act, not a person. For sure, the trampoline act was around at least 75 years before there were safety nets. But what did they look like? The earliest depiction of a table-type trampoline is only about 100 years old. It's of the Max Franklin troupe in this 1893 vaudeville poster. This group performed regularly in Berlin's Winter Garden and throughout Europe and the USA. Interestingly, they called their trampoline a springboard. Remember, in Spanish, the word trampolina means springboard. Incidentally, Max's son Herman kept the Franklin group together all the way up until the start of World War II. Still, what would the trampolines look like before this and before the safety nets? A clue to the answer is in this article published on March 28, 1925. The very first history of the trampoline was written by former circus performer John Warland. As a young man, Warland was one of the most famous performers in the world, and the only one verified to regularly do a triple somersault in his trampoline act. You heard me right, a triple somersault. He did this first one in 1874 in St. Louis, Missouri, before a crowd of hundreds. It was a triple front flip, not a triple back. There was no twist. It was not a triffus. It had a blind landing, and get this, it was over 5 horses. He did the triple several times around the nation. The apparatus he used didn't look anything like what we would call a trampoline today, but trampoline is what it was called back then. Another name was Butt-out. Butt-out? That sounds awfully familiar. Trampoline in Russian?
In Russian, trampoline, batut.
Batut.
Yes, batut.
So, the Russian word for trampoline is batut. It's also the name for this springboard-type apparatus, which the Spanish call a trampolina. The words were interchangeable to performers before this century. The thing we call a trampoline today didn't even have a separate identity from the springboard until many years later. The word trampoline came to mean any apparatus a performer used to rebound and leap with. Even today, the Spanish don't call a trampoline. It's called something else.
Trampoline in Spanish?
Yes.
Cama elástica.
Cama elástica. And that translates to mean elastic bed, which is an excellent term to describe today's apparatus. Further confuse matters, the original Italian word of trampoli had an entirely different meaning. In Old Italian, the word polo meant pole, and poli was the plural, meaning poles. Trampoli meant walking poles, or stilts. A stilt walker was a trampolinero. Whatever the variation, by the end of the 1700s, the word trampoline had come to mean something used for leaping or jumping. It also referred to an act involving leaping or jumping. And leaping is where the trampoline was really used during the 1800s. Before the advent of the flying trapeze, the most popular event of the circus was called leaping. Every circus worth its salt featured this act. Almost every male member of the cast would take part, running down a ramp, hitting the trampoline board, and somersaulting into the air over people, animals, and objects. In fact, when John Warland wrote his history of the trampoline in 1925, he was referring to the leaping event. Leaping of one form or the other can be traced all the way back to the Middle Ages. This is a print from the 16th century of someone doing just that. Modern leaping started probably with a man named John Bill Ricketts, who founded the first American circus just after the American Revolution. Ricketts was an expert horseman and mingled with some of the most prominent people in Philadelphia of the time. When he opened his circus on May 15, 1793, many were on hand to see it. Ricketts performed mostly equestrian skills, but also included a leaping exhibition where he somersaulted over 9 mounted men. Witnessing this historic first rebounding act, none other than Ricketts' good friend, General George Washington, who often attended the Ricketts Circus. Years later, the first leaper to be called a champion was Tom King after a leap of 31 feet 7 inches in 1856. He regularly did double somersaults over people and horses. Some say he even tried a triple on one occasion. Other leapers tried to do triples, and many died in the effort, more than 20 of them. Soon, it wasn't how many flips you could do, but how many horses or elephants you could do them over that counted. In this, there were several truly great leaping champions. George Kelly, Billy Dutton, and Bob Stickney dominated the headlines before the American Civil War. Stickney was particularly known for his form and grace as a leaper. He wore a tight-fitting costume similar to that introduced by aerialist Jules Leotard in the mid-1860s. The greatest rivalry of the time was between William Batchelor and Frank Gardner. They met head-to-head in competition several times. The leaping was truly spectacular. On one occasion, Batchelor turned a single somersault 33 feet 8 inches and 11 feet 7 inches. That is length and height. Gardner did a double flip for a distance of 32 feet 2 inches. Modern performers have attempted to duplicate these feats with varying degrees of success. Here's the Canestrelli family. The star of the show is Marco Canestrelli. We'll be seeing more of him later in the program. That wasn't bad, but the ultimate leaping achievement was in 1881 when Frank Gardner did a double somersault over 9 elephants and a single over 12 of them. This incredible achievement was advertised near and far, and Gardner's hometown presented him with the first gold medal ever given for leaping. Frank Gardner, a true champion jumper in any century. By the 1900s, leaping over objects had given way to the more familiar swing-time bouncing we now associate with the trampoline. Besides the Franklins and Flying Fishers, vaudeville frequently featured trampoline shows by the likes of the Walloons, Stan Stanley, Mark Germain, and Tommy Gordon. And then there was Walter Lindsley. Lindsley taught at San Francisco's Columbia Park Boys Club. It was there that witnesses saw him regularly perform twisting double somersaults in 1928, the earliest flippuses on record. Both Barani in and Barani outs were being done. One of Lindsley's students was destined to become one of the greatest professional trampolinists of all time. His name, George Paul. George Paul formed his first trampoline act in high school in 1930. Called the Paul Trio, it was an amateur act at first. Later, performing with his wife, Lorraine Young, Paul developed many of the classic trampoline comedy shticks used by dozens of later performers. He was a good jumper, too. In 1932, at age 18, Paul was the first we know of to achieve the triple twist on the trampoline. Later on, with a divorce from Lorraine, Paul went on to form other groups. First, the Jumping Jacks, and then his most famous act, Paul and Paulette, with his second wife, June Schaller. June had come from a trampolining family. Her brothers, Johnny and Tony, had a professional act of their own. Remember the piano-shaped trampoline? The bellhop and French maid became a classic in professional trampoline acts. Many of these comedy bits are imitated today by modern performers. When George was injured in 1948, a variation of the act was created called the Paul and Paulette Trio when June's brothers filled in for him. The next year, AAU trampoline champion Jimmy Garner joined the team, and the act was better than ever. The George Paul Trio continued all the way up until 1954 with various cast members, many of whom became great performers in their own right. These included Donna Snedden, Marilyn Boyden, Vern Evans, and Darlene Morgan. After a divorce from June, an interesting turn took place when George's former wives came together in a pro act of their own called Paulette and Renee. Successful trampoline acts by females were rare, but one success was Marge Nelson and Deanne Schwartz. This act combined beauty, comedy, and real trampoline skill. Deanne was the comedian, and probably the first female to achieve a Barani out flippus on the trampoline. Marge became Miss USA in 1959 on a fluke. She had come to perform in the pageant and was asked to enter. She won. Another pro act of the time was the Jays. Later known as the Rudells, Mel Jay did comedy and led the group, and his brother Russell was the first confirmed person to achieve a full twisting double back, full in back out in 1939. There was a rumor that film star Joey Brown had done this and even more earlier in vaudeville, but all films of his trampoline performances were destroyed in a fire. Mr. Brown claims to have achieved a full-in triple back, a skill we hadn't seen achieved until 1982 in Bozeman, Montana by Brett Austin. Considering the equipment of the 30s, it's possible that Joey was stretching it a little bit. The unique thing about the trampoline is that it is fun and spontaneous. During the early 50s, the paths of professional trampoline performers would often cross, and jumpers would socialize with gymnasts and other acrobats from the circus. It happened in Sarasota, Florida, Muscle Beach, California, and here at Jerry Doyle's Acrobat Ranch outside Phoenix. This rare shot shows pioneers George Paul, Deanne Schwartz, Marge Nelson, and Larry Griswold all in the same picture. Another place jumpers met was in this Los Angeles used car lot run by Bud Boyle and Sonny Butler. A frequent visitor was pro trampolinist Hal Coates. Another was this girl, Dolores Dixon, the main character in one of trampoline's most poignant stories.
I met Dolores Dixon when she was looking for a partner for a trampoline act. I met her through her theatrical agent, and Dolores and I got together, and I started training her. I trained her for about 5 years during the time we were doing shows. She was absolutely the most sensational female athlete I had ever met. I was teaching her to do a back with a half twist, and she accidentally did a back with a full. So I said, okay, why don't you do a full? And she accidentally did a full and a half. It was incredible the way she could work. She could do a front somersault or a back somersault, and she goes zip so easily, it almost looks like she was just doing a jump. She's a marvelous performer, way ahead of her time.
We can see by her performances on solid canvas and heavy web beds, Dolores was by far the best in the world during the 50s. She had no chance to prove it, though. Except for a few local meets in far-off Texas, there were no trampoline competitions for women in the 50s. Dolores set out on a pro career in the sport she loved, trampolining. That career was cut short by a doctor's examination which revealed that Dolores had been missing a vertebrae since birth. His strong orders, give up the trampoline. Dolores was crushed. Depressed, she disappeared from the trampoline scene to emerge a few years later at Doyle's acrobatic camp with her new son. Her depression had led her to drinking. Shortly after this film was taken, the greatest female trampolinist of her time died of cirrhosis of the liver. She was 25 years old. In the overall history of the trampoline, competition is relatively new. If there was a connection between the early pro trampoline acts and the development of today's sport of competitive trampolining, one might say it was through this man, Larry Griswold.
Larry Griswold is the king of the aqua swing. His first flight is a quadruple somersault, over, and over, and over, and then under. The big swing is a thriller because the diver's takeoff is not only moving fast, but moving in an arc. Even the great Griswold can't practice this stuff long. It's too tough. You either get it right the first time or get discouraged. The experts say it takes orientation, whatever that is. But it is the same as diving from the trampoline. Timing is the answer for Griswold to make the perfect entry and not to get hurt. For an encore, Larry Griswold does the full twisting triple. Oh, that's as thrilling as a ride in a dive bomber.
Besides obviously being a world-class athlete, Larry Griswold was the consummate showman. He created a unique trampoline and diving act, which toured the world for thousands of performances. This act was later taught to and performed by several other outstanding showmen, including Bob Perry, Willie Keough, and it's done today by another outstanding young man by the name of Don Zadney. For his own part, Larry Griswold performed all the way up to the age of 62. So how did this professional acrobat influence the birth of trampolining as a sport? Well, he did write the very first book on trampolining in 1942. Griswold's Trampoline Tumbling was the first definitive study of the use of the apparatus. Larry's real influence on trampolining becoming a sport has to be traced back a little further than that. We have to go back into the 30s again. During the mid-30s, Larry Griswold was a graduate student at the University of Iowa. In addition to being a graduate student, he was an instructor. He taught gymnastics and acrobatics. One of his projects there was the creation of the Iowa Circus, a sort of university project that would involve the athletes from the school. Larry wanted to include a trampoline. Well, there were no trampoline manufacturers around, so he had one made. Who was going to jump on the trampoline? Well, Iowa had some outstanding performers on their gymnastics team. One of them was a young man by the name of George Nissen. As a gymnast, George Nissen was one of the greatest of his time. He was the United States national tumbling champion 3 times. In addition to this, he was an all-American diver. The trampoline was a natural for him. Upon graduation from Iowa, Nissen became a professional acrobat and did hundreds of performances around the world. But the trampoline was on his mind. Nissen felt that the trampoline had a legitimate place in physical education. His plan was to standardize the apparatus, manufacture it, and sell it to recreation departments, physical educators, and to the armed forces. Originally, Larry Griswold and George Nissen were together in the Griswold-Nissen Corporation. Larry's heart was more in the education and performance end of the activity, though. Before long, the two split, and George Nissen himself started the very first trampoline manufacturing company in the world. His first customer? St. Louis YMCA, St. Louis, Missouri. Before long, the physical education departments of universities started responding. And then, Nissen's big break. The armed forces. With World War II coming on, both the Army and Navy had a great use for more flyers. Nissen proposed that the trampoline would be an excellent apparatus for use in the pre-flight training of pilots. One young naval officer that agreed with Nissen was Chuck Keeney of California. Keeney had been the 1935 national tumbling champion and was well aware of the benefits of using a trampoline for training pilots. He had even built his own trampoline as early as 1929, back in Long Beach, California. As the physical education officer at St. Mary's Pre-Flight School in California, he urged his superiors to take Nissen up on his offer to sell trampolines to the Navy. Soon, trampolines were being used not only at St. Mary's, but at the other pre-flight schools around the nation, including one in Iowa. Attending that pre-flight school in Iowa was a young gymnast who was destined to become America's first great collegiate trampoline coach. His name, Newt Loken. Newt had been the national all-around gymnastics champion in 1942. He was very taken with the trampoline, so much so that when he was assigned as a lieutenant on an aircraft carrier in 1944, he saw to it that there was a trampoline on board. As far as we know, it was the only trampoline on an aircraft carrier during the Second World War. After the war, Newt Loken became gymnastics coach at the University of Michigan and a very strong proponent of trampolining being a competitive event along with gymnastics. About this same time, the trampoline was finally finding its way into boys' clubs and YMCAs around the nation. The trampoline was added to the acrobatic and tumbling programs of 2 clubs in Texas, the Maverick Boys Club in Amarillo and the Dallas Athletic Club. These 2 clubs were destined to become opponents in the very first ever trampoline competition. The first trampoline competition on the planet took place on April 28, 1946. It was held at the Dallas Athletic Club in Dallas, Texas. The host coach and meet director was none other than Charlie Pond, who was destined to become probably the greatest tumbling coach of all time. Opposing him from the Maverick Boys Club in Amarillo, Texas, a young man by the name of Nard Cazell. Nard had learned his trampolining in the Navy. Except for an article in the Dallas Morning News, there's little to tell us about that historic first trampoline competition. The winner was Skippy Browning, who later became an Olympic diving champion, but there is no film of his trampoline routine. The following year, the Dallas Athletic Club hosted the AAU Gymnastics Nationals, and trampoline was included for the very first time. The first national champion of trampoline was Jimmy Garner from California, who edged out Bob Fenner for the title. In 1948, trampoline was an event in the NCAA Gymnastics Championships for U.S. universities, and super jumpers Gay Hughes, Bob Schoenduby, Bill Harris, and Ed Buchanan dominated this new gymnastics event. In 1950, Ted Blake brought two British high schools together for a trampoline meet, the first competition ever to be held in Europe. A short time later, Europe's first trampoline federation was formed in Scotland. A book written in the mid-50s by Jim Norman and Frank Ledoux was unique. This is Trampolining illustrated many skills in novel flip pages and mechanically analyzed almost every trick that had ever been achieved on the trampoline to that time, along with many yet to be done. Later titled 2 Seconds of Freedom, this book was the Bible of the sport. Great trampolinists like Iowa's Bob Hazlett were often exceptional divers or gymnasts as well. These included the likes of Florida's Dick Gooding, Texan Bob Elliott, and Dick Elbershard from Illinois. Also from Illinois was Jeff Austin, who uniquely won national titles in both trampoline and tumbling. Larry Griswold's cousin, Glenn Wilson, won national trampoline titles from both the NCAA and AAU. Ohio State's Don Harper won the first international trampoline competition when the Pan American Games included the event in 1955. Harper also went on to win multiple NCAA titles in both trampoline and diving. Like Harper, Ed Cole was a champion diver converted to trampoline and successful in both. The late 50s saw trampoline's first superstar. His name, Ron Munn. This Texas youngster was a student of Nard Cazell and could flip and twist with the best of them. A two-time AAU national champion, Munn also was the second man to win an international meet at the Pan Am Games in 1957. Later, Munn toured South Africa and did hundreds of school assembly programs with partner Ed Cole. He became an executive with the Nissan Corporation and ultimately married Nissan's daughter, Dagmar. In 1960, women finally had a national trampoline championship. Barbara Gallagher was the first women's champion, demonstrating athletic talent that had also won her 9 tumbling titles. Through the promotional efforts of George Nissen, Kurt Beckler, and other enthusiasts, the sport was now catching on around the world. It was possibly time for an international organization, so at the suggestion of England's Ted Blake, an international trampoline federation was formed, with Switzerland's René Scherer as president. Upon Scherer's retirement, Erich Kinzel from Germany took over and held the post for the next quarter century until he was succeeded in 1990 by Ron Kreulich. In 1964, the first World Trampoline Championships were held at London's Royal Albert Hall under Ted Blake's direction and Nissan's sponsorship. Since there were no international trampoline rules, competition was held as a man-to-man double elimination. The USA was so strong that it entered 2 separate teams, and Americans dominated the event. California's Dan Millman edged out Gary Irwin for the first World Championship, and America's Judy Wills was so good that she won the first of her 5 world titles, even after falling. Also in 1964, the first World Professional Championships was run at Grossinger's Resort in New York, and George Harry beat out other great bouncers like Steve Johnson and Ron Munn for that title. 3 years later, in 1967, Harry was edged out by 1965 amateur champion Gary Irwin in the second professional meet, sponsored by Nissan in Chicago. This pro meet drew great jumpers like Johnny Hamilton and Fred Saunders and a big crowd. But it wasn't to be held again until 1975 in Toronto, Canada. Meanwhile, the first 6 World Amateur Championships were dominated by great American athletes like Wayne Miller, Dave Jacobs, Dale Hart, and George Hunsaker. Judy Wills was unbeatable during this period. And then in 1968, a trampolinist became the most famous woman on earth when junior AAU champion Judy Ford won the Miss America title. Her telecast performance was probably the most widely watched trampoline routine in history. The 70s would see the first world age group competition, along with a number of new developments in trampoline equipment, including 6mm beds, safety index, and the double mini trampoline. It would also see the sport hurt through a proliferation of trampoline-related lawsuits throughout the United States. In addition, without investigating the excellent safety record of competitive trampoline in the U.S., the American Academy of Pediatrics publicly condemned the sport as dangerous. The effect on public relations for trampolining was devastating in America. Still, there were more meets than ever throughout the world, including the great invitational competitions you see here. The 70s would also see the emergence of a brand new breed of competitor, heralded by the unique talents of world champion Paul Luxon. Luxon made an early impact on the trampoline scene when he won the first European Championships in 1969. Within 3 years, this British jumper became the most influential trampoline. More than that, he developed a unique form style which included the unheard of idea of twisting with straight arms and early leg extension out of somersaults. After a dramatic win of the 1972 World Championships in Germany, Luxon went on to win the 3rd World Professional Championships. Soon, his unique style was being emulated by many other world-class jumpers, and the FIT itself actually changed the judging rules to accommodate Luxon's innovations. Paul Luxon didn't win every meet he entered, but his impact on the sport was both profound and lasting.
There were times, I guess you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But with it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up, then spit it out. The record shows I took the blows, and I did it my
After Luxon broke the U.S. monopoly of world championships, the sport would never be the same. While American coaches were fighting an uphill battle against greedy lawyers and impossible insurance rates, the rest of the world began turning out great trampolinists in a symphony of movement and aerial genius. The Soviets arrived on the scene in the mid-70s when Mikhail Smirnov brought Igor Tokar and Olga Starakova to their first Western meet in Cleveland. Few knew what to expect, but there was no question the Soviets had done their homework. They had developed a system of training far superior to the rest of the world. Starting with world champions Svetlana Levina and Yevgeny Yanis, the USSR began not only winning but sweeping international competitions. By the 90s, great Soviet jumpers soon dominated the sport, including Igor Bogashev, Tatiana Lushina, Alexander Moskalenko, and the great Vadim Krasnyshavka. Most trampoline videos and films have always dealt with the same thing: bouncing up and down, or possibly competition routines. But trampoline is more than just jumping up and down. We'd like to talk today about a few things that perhaps you've never thought of, such as, what was it like to compete in the 40s? Here's a man that was there. Not only did he compete, he won. He was the first NCAA champion in 1948, Mr. Gaylord Hughes. We caught up with him at his home outside of Chicago, Illinois.
Hey, Gay, what was it like back in 1948 when you won the Nationals?
Well, it was the first year of competition. We were bouncing on that old double-thick canvas bed with old springs, and you had to work for every bit of height you ever had. And being the first year of competition, no one knew really what to expect. It was considered stationary tumbling.
Newt Loken seems to recall in that first national championships that you did part of your routine, then you could walk over and talk to Charlie Pond, your coach, and then come back and do it a little more. And
that's right.
Is that right?
That's right. We had 2 minutes. Do whatever you want. And if necessary, hey, coach, what am I doing wrong here? It was kind of, I don't know, strange. It was interesting. Well, it was a baby in its infancy.
Seems it would take a real man to bounce for 2 minutes.
Well, I'll tell you, if all you have to do is try bouncing up and down for just for 2 minutes, not even doing tricks, and believe me, you were winded.
One man equal to the task, however, was Edsel Buchanan. Originally a jumper with the Maverick Boys Club in Amarillo, Texas, Edsel competed for the University of Michigan. It's quite possible that this 3-time NCAA champion was the best conditioned athlete the sport of trampolining has ever known, even today. His coach, Newt Loken, explains.
Back in the days of yore that are no more, so many memories come through our minds. Gosh, back in '48 when trampoline became an NCAA event, they set the trampoline up and they said, bouncer, you go right ahead and you can bounce. You've got 2 minutes. They wanted to get it fairly close to what the tumbling event was. So the bouncers get up, Gay Hughes, I'll never forget him in Illinois, and my bouncer, Ed Buchanan, later on. And they would literally stop in part of the routine, go over and say hi to the coach and ask him if he should improve the routine anyway, and then they'd go back and get their coaching technique words from the coach, and away they'd bounce. And when you think of Ed Buchanan back in his days in 49, 50, and 51, winning NCAA titles 1 year after the other, and the superb condition that he was at, he was quite an athlete. Matter of fact, he used to train, and every night when he finished his routine or practice in the gym, he would do 50 back somersaults into front somersaults. Not a brandy in between, but just back front. 50 of them before he'd leave the gymnasium to condition himself so he could swing into what you're seeing, that 31 balance routine that he is now performing. Ed Buchanan, NCAA champion 3 times straight.
Our next area, career opportunities in trampolining. As with other sports, in trampolining, very few amateurs make it into professional ranks. Indeed, there's a great deal of ignorance as to what's involved. Many world-class jumpers have tried and failed at this occupation. To make a consistent good living at it, you have to be good. And we don't just mean at bouncing. The handful of successful self-employed trampolinists in the world today are tested for their business acumen as well as their athletic ability. Those talented few get to make a living at something they truly love, trampolining. This professional jumper has done literally thousands of school assemblies and exhibitions around the world. He's still hanging in there today. Successful female pros are really rare. One talented exception is Leslie Young, seen here performing with professional Rick Cleland. Canadian Frank Nelia is a world-class bouncer and could compete with the best of them today. But his special something makes him a real pro. Check out this home video. Frank is more than just a comedian, though. Here he is doing one of the most difficult skills ever achieved on the trampoline. Frank got his start with professional trampolinist and diver Durango Coy. Coy's Tramp Champs organization has turned out more professionals on the trampoline than anywhere else in the world since he started it, originally with Canadian champion Rick Kinsman. A real professional, Durango Coy. You know, for those people who have never seen what it's like to do a full twisting backflip, or those people who never look when they do them, we have something special for you. We're going to try to do a full twisting backward somersault right now. Here it comes. We're going to do it now. This is a full twisting backward somersault as seen from somebody's stomach. Thank you for your attention. Oh, looks like I got tied up in my work. Now, that was silly and irresponsible. We all know that serious trampolinists concern themselves with routines. So, here is an old age group compulsory we're going to try. A backflip with a full twist, a front flip with a half twist, that's a Branny, a backflip in a tuck position, a three-quarter back to the front, a Cody to the feet, followed by a front flip with a half twist, that's another Branny, a backflip in a layout position, backflip in a pike position, watch for the legs on that one, a three-quarter front flip, and then a Branny ball out from our back. For all the vicarious trampolinists out there, this is what it would look like. Here we go. Ready? There is a full twisting backflip, a Branny, a tuck back, three-quarter back, Cody up to the feet, another Branny, a layout back, a pike back, watch the feet, there we go, three-quarter front, and a Branny ball out in the tuck position. Now, as a bonus, here's a couple of individual skills. A backflip, double back. Here's what it would look like. We set it up with a backflip, another backflip, here we go, the double back, 2 times around, boom. Now let's try it frontwards. Backflip, and a Branny out flip this. This is a half-twisting double front flip instead of the double back. There's a backflip again, another backflip, and here we go, double front, half out. Let's try this one, a 2.5 twisting front flip. You have to watch the bed throughout most of the thing here. Here we go, and it's a backflip. Here we go, 2.5 twisting front flip. Something a little more complicated, the Rudy out pike. This is a 1.5 twisting double front. Here we go, pike, 1.5 twist on a second somersault, and a half in full out, another variation on it. Here we go, you can watch the bed through the whole thing. Watch this, here we go, half in, full out. This should satisfy everybody's curiosity. The common axiom is that the more flips or twists a skill has, the more difficult it is. The manner of landing, though, makes one classification of skills the most difficult. The blind 1 3/4 and 2 3/4 backward somersaults. This group of gutsy moves are rarely seen in competition today. But in the 1967 World Pro Meet, Ron Munn achieved an amazing Rudy in 3/4 out. Dale Hart uniquely did a double full in 3/4 out in the 1970 World Championships. And in 1987, Australia's awesome Brett Austin achieved this full twisting 2 3/4. The triple Cody was incidental. In recent years, many new world-class coaches have emerged, but it'll take a lot to match the achievements of America's past senior coaches. In college competition, Newt Loken's University of Michigan team was untouchable. For years, international age group competition long felt the pressure of athletes trained by veterans Bob Bollinger and Nard Cazell, each with dozens of gold medals in age group competition. The record for world championships, though, is held by Louisiana's Jeff Hennessy with an amazing 14 gold medals. And then there's France's Michel Roquette. Not only is Roquette a world-class trampoline and tumbling coach, he's arguably the best announcer in the sport.
Monsieur Steve Elliott est là très certainement. Il est en train de faire un strapping. Alors, amis spectateurs, qui est avec une brille au second tour, double avant avec demi-brille, plus que 2 touches, attention à la dernière, triple avant avec demi-brille, Steve Elliott!
If body language is a criteria for coaching, then I vote for Aaron Johnson. Watch him live this routine that John Ross did back in 1982. For a coaching team, it would be very hard to beat this group. Dave Pittaway, Stuart Matthews, and Paul Luxon, 3 world-class jumpers. When they got together in Essen to do this triple backflip, the crowd was rightfully amused and impressed. There's nothing new about this trick, though. Years before, the Canestrelli family did the same thing. Canestrellis are the greatest trampoline artists in circus history. They're going to try to do it one better with 4 people. 4 in a backflip. The group is coached by Fred Canestrelli, father of the whole bunch of them. That's Marco, just did a backflip up to 3 high. We're going to be seeing more of Marco here. Some of the skills they do are just fantastic. Here's a Rudy out to the shoulders. Takes a certain amount of nerve to be the bottom man on that. He jumps down, takes a little jump up in the air, and it's a half in, half out to the shoulders. Up here, one more little jump and just an incidental preface just to warm down a little bit. If the Canestrellis have a specialty, it's twisting. No one can do it like Marco.
Man in the world to ever attempt a 6-fold twisting somersault, Marco Canestrelli.
Marco is the only one ever to accomplish this incredible feat. Now, if you don't believe me, check the Guinness Book of Records. He's in there. Count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
What trampolinist has gone the highest? Well, many would say that the honor goes to Stuart Matthews outright. Stuart has taken almost 22 seconds to do a 10-bounce trampoline routine. That is an incredible feat. Here's some really high jumping, though. Stuntman Dar Robinson has his trampoline suspended from a helicopter more than 1,000 feet above the ground. Now that is really high. The trampolinist who has gone the highest, though, is this Canadian gentleman. You recognize him? It's Pierre Trudeau. He went very high. He made it all the way to Prime Minister. In trampolining, as with other sports, sometimes things go wrong. It could be bad equipment, maybe you're psyched out, or maybe you just had a bad day. But to actually hit your routine in the World Championships, well, that's been described as practically a religious experience. Well, that about finishes our trampoline story, except for one thing. The teachers. The people that introduced us to this wonderful piece of apparatus. Some of them were called Coach, and they coached the world champions. Others were called Mom or Dad, and they'll never coach a champion. Under any circumstances, they are the people that introduced us to the trampoline. The good ones taught us how to bounce on it. The great ones taught us to reach for the sky.
Disappointment was my closest friend, but then you came and it soon departed.